Ryan Sullivan, my man, welcome to the podcast. I am excited for you to be here, brother.
I'm excited to be here, Stu, man. This is awesome. And it's been a couple reschedules, so I'm just excited to. We built a lot of excitement and some
For
hype
real.
before we actually did it. So I'm excited to be here, man.
The hype is real, 100%, man. And so as we kick this thing off, I figured if you want to give kind of the listeners an idea of like what did life look like for little Sully as you grew up, like what was kind of life like for you as you were a little kid?
Yeah, I love this question because I feel like I always go through like my background first. So I love starting like way back,
Yeah.
not something I think about all the time. So, but yeah, man, growing up for me, I grew up in a rural county, Hunterdon County, New Jersey out here. A lot of people don't realize it even exists. I mean, people think New Jersey and they think, oh, you live in a city. It's like I barely have high speed internet, man. Like, so like if my internet was just messing up before this, it's like I'm on like the maximum internet and I can't even, takes like a year to download something, right? So I'm out here, and so all around me, I'm surrounded by farmland, a lot of hills, just like hills and valleys and trees. So, what I would always just be outside all day. And I loved cars and trucks and tractors. My first word was tractor. Like
Nice.
So it was like, that's really the life that I kind of lived. And so my parents came from a more suburban area where they grew up. So my mom was always into horses. So that's why they ended up moving out here. My dad was like, all right, I'll move to a more rural area so you can have your horse. And so he built her a barn, and then we had a horse until I was 10 years old. And we've had like other farm animals and stuff growing up too. So it was really that type of life, like really stupid simple. My mom was a bus driver and a waitress, and then my dad was a union pipe insulator. So full blue collar. My grandfather went to college. My aunt and uncle went to college, but my parents didn't. So I was technically first generation college student. And so, but yeah, man, growing up, I mean, really pretty simple, rural. I mean, then later on through my childhood, I got into video games. I was into sports too, but I wasn't a big athlete, but I loved basketball and I did that too. So I always had like something going on, physically as well. But yeah, I feel like I kind of like went inside after a certain point once I got so into like video games and YouTube and like creating content, back in the kind of teenage days. But yeah, pretty simple upbringing, I would say.
Very solid, man. And so as you grew up, I'm curious then, with you being like, first generation and all that, as you grew up, did you have an idea of like some of the dreams, aspirations, things you wanted to do with your life? Was it, I don't really know what I want to do. I just want to go, get through college, or like, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do with your life as you grew up?
Not really. I think I guess I had some ideas at the very least. I thought I wanted to be an architect. I always loved houses. I would just draw. So like all over my papers in school, I draw like houses and I connect them with like driveways. And I don't know, I was just so into that, I really appreciated homes and houses and architecture, even when I was younger. So between that and like I said, cars, auto, trucks, tractors, all that stuff, I was really into that as well. So I think I kind of knew maybe it would be something in one of those areas. And then but nothing that really stood out as like, oh, you're definitely going to do this. Like there was not really one thing that stood out.
Okay. So maybe the theme of like building things, but other than that, it wasn't like a specific thing. And so as you kind of kept going throughout your life, at what point does music come in? Because obviously that's a major part of your life. So at what point, does that really become part of your life?
Yeah, so that was around 11, 12 years old after playing Guitar Hero and Rock Band for years. You know how it goes. And then
those are the days.
Yeah, man, those were the days. That was great. My mom, I'm pretty sure one of my parents bought me a guitar, pretty similar to this guitar. And I actually have it in my closet.
Real guitar, not Guitar Hero guitar.
No, a real guitar. It was a Squire Strat. And it was great. It was just this great little Sunburst Squire. And so my mom paid for guitar lessons for me. And I just sat down with the lady and I just said, hey, I just want to play these songs on Guitar Hero. And she said, yeah, no problem. Sounds good. So she didn't try to really teach me fundamentals of music. She just was like, we'll teach you the songs you want to know. And so I love that, and obviously I learned some of the music and like different chords and things like that, but I would learn them as I was learning the songs. Right. So I wanted to play Rockstar by Nickelback. So I just remember learning the chords for that. And that's how I would learn the chords, So I played guitar for a few years. And then once I got into middle school, I started playing percussion, and because one of my best friends played drums and percussion too, and they didn't really have a guitar. Like, you were kind of weird if you play guitar in the concert band, you know? So I was like, percussion's cool. We can make a lot of noise. So my friend's playing drums. I start playing percussion. He starts playing the drum set. Then I get a drum set. I start playing the drum set. And then we both go into jazz band together and like learn the drum set. And he was like always an amazing drummer. And I was kind of just, always played guitar and some drums like behind him too. But yeah, that's kind of how it worked. I mean, it was like this one kind of starting moment when I got the guitar and learned how to play those songs. And then after I took lessons for maybe a year or two tops, then I would just self-teach myself all the songs, because my mindset was always just, if I want to learn, I'll just learn the song. I don't have to learn this theory or all this, these scales or these chords. I wish I would have learned them, obviously, but that was really my mindset. So, in high school, you could find me, you would come over to my house and I would just be playing guitar on my amp and just messing around. And so, I really enjoyed drums too, but then guitar came back into my life later, and I really focused on that for a few years, high school, college. But then I got into rapping later on, but I could go into that.
Yeah. I mean, I think one interesting part, even as you talk about when you first picked up a guitar, and I think it's such a beautiful lesson that like anybody can take in their life, is the sense of, and maybe not naivety, I don't even know if that's a word, I don't know if that's the correct word I'm looking for, but like this sense of ignorance is bliss, where it's like sometimes you want to go learn something and someone's like, well, you got to do X, Y, Z, this, that, the other, in 300 or 400 steps, and then you can go do that thing, rather than someone just coming in and saying like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to go do that thing. And like, even though someone that maybe an experienced guitar player says, no, you need to learn all these chords to get there, sometimes it's an advantage to look at what do we want to go do in life and just go do that thing. Like, don't try to overcomplicate it and say, I need to do these 12 things before I do the thing I actually want. It's like asking yourself, what's the thing you want to do, and just go do that thing. And if you like it, do more of it. You know what I mean? And like, obviously, regardless of if you learn the chords or if you learned just the songs right away, regardless, it's going to take time, effort, energy, work. You're going to probably get frustrated at points, whether you're learning the basic chords or the song. But the reality is, like, you went for the result you wanted, not some of the, I think, minutia sometimes that as we go after like a goal, something we want in our life, sometimes we get caught up in the minutia. And I think kind of a beautiful lesson for people to take from that is like, go for the thing you want. Don't get caught up in all the little things that may not be needed to get that result. Like, you didn't technically need all those chords, all those little things to get there.
No, and it's true. And that's been a theme in my life as well. And I will say there is an overemphasis on fundamentals sometimes, where you kind of just have to drop into it and then fail that way. And it's like, which way do you want to fail? Like, you kind of mentioned this too in other words, was do you want to fail learning the song, or do you want to fail learning the chords? You're going to learn the chords both ways. It's which context works for you, So, and I think especially with school, as we've seen and as we've came up, is like, hey, this doesn't work for everybody. This teaching fundamentals first, or teaching 20 kids the same way. And my girlfriend is a kindergarten teacher, and I've really she's opened my eyes to like how schools work and how backwards it can be. And so and then it's like, dude, it's guitar lessons, like freestyle it, do whatever you want. Like, you're out of this structured environment. And then when you take that, all right, cool, that's guitar lessons. And then you can apply that to new things that you want to do. So, and like I said, it has been a theme, for sure in my life of like, I'm an audio engineer, but dude, I know people who went to school for it, and they'll tell you on a forum, don't do this, don't do that. And it's like, I do that and my clients are happy and I'm making money. And, it's like, so it's crazy. It's kind of just depends what camp you come from, man. But that's really interesting to touch on. Like, the fundamentals, you need them for sure, but you can also learn them along the way,
Right. Yeah. And so then, like, let's say we continue down your music career. I know you said hip hop eventually comes in at a later point. Kind of how did that come into your life? And I'm curious too, was that something where you just said, I'm just going to like jump in and do this and learn? Like, is this, similar theme where it's like, I don't need to learn all the technicals, I'm just going to go do it? And how did that come in?
Yeah, that was probably less on my own, just in the less on my own than it was with other people. It was more with other people. So I have to definitely mention that. So I had a friend of mine, his name's Justin, and he always comes up and when I tell this story, just because he's fundamental to this. And so what we would do is we were obsessed with working out, right, in high school. And I was a small kid. I was like a little kid. Like without working out and diet and stuff, I'd be like 120 pounds or something. You know, it's like I was such a little kid, right? And you get to high school or whatever, you're like, I'm like gonna get beat up or something, you know? So he had a crazy physique, and we would just go so hard and work out. And so after we would work out for like 3 hours, we had nothing to do, you know, like back in the day, you have nothing to do. So he would just freestyle. He put me onto freestyling. I'd never seen this before. Like I had listened to classic rock my whole life, hardcore, like punk music, rock music of every genre. I'd never really been into hip hop. I knew who Eminem was. I knew who Jay-Z was. I probably knew who Drake and Kanye were, but I couldn't name a song. Like I didn't, that's as far as I went into hip hop, basically, other than maybe a few fringe artists. But so we would do that. He would freestyle, and I just started freestyling with him. You know, he was like, let's do it. Right. And so it was just me and him. And we had a good friend. We still have a good friend of ours, Purnell. And so he was one of those guys where like he would like skip school to make beats. Like he was still a brilliant producer. He had 1 million plays on SoundCloud by the time we left high school. Like he was already on his way to kind of do that. Right. So we got lucky of having him 10 minutes away and going to our school. So Justin and we had the idea, I'm not sure whose it was, but to create a diss track for some kid in our school. And we were like, let's create, this kid's talking about how we rap or how we don't rap. And I'm like, let's just make a diss track. Or one of us had the idea. And so we went to Purnell's house. He made the beat. We had a little, stupid little microphone, and we recorded it, released it. And I remember like driving home after this session, my first ever like studio session, you could call it, in Purnell's basement when his mom wasn't home. And so I just remember thinking about it and playing it. And I'm like, I don't know. Let's just see what happens. I wonder what's going to happen. So man, like the next week, like in 2 weeks, I had like 500 plays, and like, I was like, there were substitutes coming up to us in school and telling us they listened to it. And it was just kind of crazy, man. So it really all started with freestyling, and then this one little diss track that we made for this kid. And then another friend of mine who's a pretty high level artist now, he actually dissed us back. And so that was kind of, it was kind of funny. Yeah. So we had this little thing going on. So that's really how it started, man. Just with one stupid diss track.
That's wild. And I love how you guys are like, let's just put it out. It's like you're starting and you're like, like, maybe it's great. Maybe it's our first thing that we've ever done, but it's like, who cares? Like, let's see what happens. And I love that sort of outlook. It's like, do something and just see what happens. And obviously it turned out well. So
yeah, that's it. You just gotta, try, see what happens. That's it.
For real. And like, yeah, I think like you're saying, it's like, you're going to learn, you're going to fail, you're going to get back up. It's like asking yourself, such a beautiful way you phrase that is like, in what way do you want to fail? Because in life, you will fail in certain ways. And again, is it doing something that you enjoy and want to do, or is it failing at doing this thing that doesn't actually excite you with your life? And so like one thing I'd be curious is, so, obviously you get into music, you start doing that, and eventually podcasting comes into your life. And I'm curious for you, how did you kind of initially get into podcasting? Why did you get in? And then how did you go from that to all of a sudden creating basically a podcast production company where you really like bring on people to do this for now?
Yeah, I was always into podcasts. I was always into Joe Rogan. I was listening to Joe Rogan in 2014, I mean, that's when everybody just would have known. Do you know Joe Rogan? Yeah, from Fear Factor. And like, that was it, right? Like the UFC was not even close to as popular as it is. And I wasn't even into martial arts or any of that stuff. I just found him on YouTube because I was just a YouTube kid, just coming home every day and just like watching stuff and playing video games. And like, as video games started to phase out of my life, I thought I was going to be this gamer and YouTuber and stuff. And kind of as that started to phase out, we had that phase. Then I started coming into this kind of YouTube podcast phase. And I don't know how I found them, but I was just obsessed with listening to these random people that Joe had on. So I always loved the podcast medium from when I found it. And I had done like little podcasts about like gaming and stuff back in the day, but nothing that was a real like interview show. So I always loved the idea, and I just was like, maybe one day, you kind of have that thing of that would be cool to try. Right. And so I mentioned it to people, and I remember mentioning it to people in high school, even like towards the end, and they were like, yeah, I'd like listen to it. That's what they told me. They just, a few of my friends said they weren't even my closest friends. They just said, yes, Sully, we'd listen to it for sure, you know? And I just remember those two people saying that. I'm like, all right, that's like, okay, maybe I can try it. So I said, you know, might as well try it. I have this same webcam. I had a different microphone that I still have. And I sat down in front of my computer and I did this thing called Monday Thoughts. So every Monday I'd release a 60-second video of random things that I was thinking about. So what I did was I took the Monday Thoughts. Yeah. And so that worked, man. People really like those. Like I always tell myself I should bring them back. But so I would take those themes and I would expand on them. I figure I'll just, I do 30, however, 30 of these a month. I'll just expand, or not 30, I do 4 of them a month. I'll just take the last 8 and I'll just, expand on them. So I did 2 podcast episodes by myself, just talking to the camera. And, I really liked that for sure. But I was, just trying to figure it out. I didn't know I didn't have a schedule consistency. The podcast had a different name than it has now. And it had a kind of different angle too. It was more gauged towards millennials. And it was called the Millennial Mind Podcast. And it was just to kind of go over my thoughts on these random things. And so then I meet some kid in community college. His name's Dan Valente. And I meet him and I meet him in my class and he talks to class. He's like, yeah, I want to do this thing called Startup Sundays where I feature startups that are, in New Jersey on Sunday and I'll do a whole show about it. And I said, I don't even care if you do that. I'm like, that's just a good idea. So who is this guy? So I start talking to this guy. He has a nice car. He dresses like, real nice every day. And I'm just like, one of those people where you go, this guy does something, Right. So turns out he made 6 figures on the stock market in a year while he was in college, worked a job at FedEx, worked there to the point where they would pay for his school. Then he quit. Then he got his school paid for he had these ways to kind of work the system, And so I said, I got to get you on the podcast, man. And then from episode 3 on, it's been an interview podcast for the last 3 years, starting with him. So changed the name, rebranded it, really kind of focused a lot on interviewing and understanding the dynamics of interviews and just following people like Tim Ferriss and Tom Bilyeu and these guys that have these really impactful and articulate interview skills. And so I tried to really learn how to do that. But I mean, from there, I continued to do that. And, to answer the rest of the question of kind of how this progressed, I kept doing my podcast, but I didn't need to blow the podcast up. I really ended up featuring, after Dan, I ended up just featuring mostly local people in the tri-state area. And then I'm an artist as well. I know a ton of artists. So I started interviewing all the artists too, because they're super interesting people. So that's kind of what the podcast did on the side. So I was a mechanic for 5 years on and off, for a few years full time and then part time while I was going to college. And that was my job. I quit sports in high school just to do that. And so, but I would come home every day, make music, make podcasts. And I didn't know how to make money from music or podcasts. Right. But I knew how to, exactly. So I knew how to work my job, but I didn't know how to make money from these other things. So there got to a point in college where I ended up going away to college. And then in the summers is when I would be a mechanic again. And so the one summer I just said, my dad's like, all right, you're going to go back to the shop this summer. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to go back to the shop. He's like, how are you going to make money? And I said, I don't know, but I'll just go through my savings. Like, I don't care what has to happen.
Not doing it.
Yeah. And I don't have bills. I'm like 20. Like, I don't have bills. I'm in college, paying rent at an apartment. That's about it. So I figured, let me try to do this freelancing thing. Cause I had a kid on my podcast. He told me about how he made 6 figures a year freelancing. So I said, all right, let me try it. Let's try it out. It's like e-commerce or whatever. People just give you the idea. You're like, drop shipping. Cool. I'll try it for a few months and see if I like it. So it took me 2 months to make $80. And from that point I went, all right, cool. This is feasible. We can do this. Like, I can, it's like, I'm like, $80
is real.
Yeah. I'm like, it should go faster after this. I got my first job, I'm on Upwork, freelancing on Upwork. And so, man, from there, I got linked up with a marketing company and I just applied to edit their podcast. I wasn't even that good at editing, but I knew I could charge like $20 an hour or something. I was US based. I could speak good English. I'm like, I could charge like $20 an hour, So I think I charged 15 to start. And this company ended up hiring me to edit it, host it, produce it, distribute it, book all the guests, write the show notes, do SEO, all these things that I had to then learn how to do. So, So
didn't know how to do when they hired you though, which is a key part.
No, I came in the interview. I was like, why am I going in an in-person interview to edit this podcast? This makes no sense. And the guy's like, he's like, I think you can do all this other stuff. And I figured, but I just said, okay, I didn't think about it. And,
Yeah.
year and a half later, I'm still working for the company. That ended up being not, I mean, it was a great experience. The company was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Like they ended up not paying people. It was like a whole, it was a whole kind of thing. And I saw the writing on the wall and just the way they treated people. And I figure I'm still in college. Let me leave. So I just left the company and then I started Podcast Principles. So I know that was a lot kind of in that whole thing. And I talked for a long time there, but it really was the thing of I didn't want to be in that place anymore, right? Then I got a corporate job doing a podcast. Then I didn't want to be in that place anymore. Then I quit that. Then I started doing my own thing, and that's kind of where I'm at now. So that's kind of like the versions of the past 4 or 5 years.
For real. And I think it's such a cool aspect too to like say, okay, I want to do this thing. Go do the work, put yourself out there on the marketplace, and then when someone says, all right, we want you to do this because clearly you were good enough at communicating to them that you could do it, then it was like, all right, someone's now hiring me and paying me for this. Like that's the ultimate motivation to be like, well, now I got to go learn it because like someone's going to send me a paycheck this week, so I got to go figure this stuff out. But it's like, one of the things Richard Branson says a lot of the time is he's like, say yes first and then figure it out. Right. It's like sometimes we just got to take that philosophy in our life of like, what's the thing you want to do? Find a way to say yes, tell the world, tell a friend, somebody that you're going to do it. And then once people start going, oh, you're going to do this, or someone hires you to do it, now you have the real motivation. Because I think too many times we go in life and we go, I want to create this thing, or I want to make this, or I want to do this. And we never actually do it. Right. But it's like, if you can start telling people this thing you want to do and have people like now kind of put a little bit of pressure on you, you're going to be so much more likely to take action in that direction, because now it's not just you saying to yourself, I want to do this. You have someone that's like, yo, how's it going? You know what I mean? We're paying you. How does it work?
Yeah. And it's a similar thing of the overemphasis on the fundamentals. People have an overemphasis on preparation for starting that too, right? It's all resistance. Not sure if you've read Stephen Pressfield, but I love this concept of resistance, right? And like that's what it is, though. It's the same thing as the fundamentals. It's like you can get bogged down in the process as much as you want, but like doing the thing is going to be what's going to kind of make you better. And yeah, I mean, sure, the risk is higher in that situation, right? Like this company could hire me and it was either going to make me or break me, like it was either I was going to learn how to do this stuff or I wasn't. And I was done, and I was back on my own. So it's more of a or B kind of mentality or mindset. Like it's make or break rather than you're coming into a role. They're slowly easing you in. You're doing your onboarding. Dude, I came right in like interviewing, Rand Fishkin, for example, interviewing these people who are like big in this marketing startups. I didn't know startups. I read TechCrunch for like 2 years. I didn't know what startups, dude. Do you think I knew I didn't know what SEO meant. I didn't know what, content marketing was. I didn't know it was a marketing company. And I'm like, yeah, I was a mechanic. I didn't tell them that, so it's like, I'm like, oh, I also have to learn about this industry and then be on a podcast interviewing people who are way, way, way smarter than me and act like I know what I'm talking about, and it's like, and I could have taken a couple years to like, all right, I won't apply for a startup yet. I think I should learn about the culture. I think I should do some unpaid internships, and things like that. So I could have taken a different approach, but yeah, really.
How do you think people can step into that like element of themselves? Like, how do you think people can create that sort of posture for themselves to say like, I'm going to say yes and figure it out?
Yeah, I think it's, well, the only issue is that you have to have the opportunity for you to be able to be in that position. So I think it's instead of trying to build it so you will be able to say yes, it's being able to create or find the opportunities, right? So it's like just mentally prepare yourself to say yes when it comes, but the harder thing to do is going to be finding the opportunities. Like that took me 3 months.
Right.
I made $80 in that 3 months. Find the so that was way harder. Saying yes, I was already on the interview. What are you going to say no at the interview? Like you're not going to say no, right? So and I think tying into this though, and more towards your question is identifying the opportunities. How do you know when it's a great opportunity or not. Like down the line, that job, you could have said, oh, it wasn't a great opportunity later on because the company was failing and I, was treated wrongly or things like that. But it was like, no, it's still an amazing opportunity. I could have lost everything in it, and that experience would have been an amazing opportunity. So as far as like the immediate or the back to the question itself, like, it's hard for me to say for me to say like, oh, this is how you set yourself up to go in over your head, and because I don't really know, like I kind of it was luck met opportunity and I took it, but so I don't really know how to create that for you. But I will say, first and foremost, you have to be the one that's going out there and getting it, right? So this is what I did off of that. This is just an example of that, which is, this is how I really got it. I saw the post on Upwork, right? And I was out of credits on Upwork, and they don't cost that much money. They're like $20, but I'm out of credits. I'm like, you know what? I'm not buying more credits to this thing. I've been doing it for 3 months. I'm finding a different way now. And so I'm in there, and for some reason, companies almost never do this because they know they're going to get spammed, but they actually put the website and the company name on the job post. So I said, okay, let's see what they're all about. So I go to the website, right? And it says book a call. So I go, all right, I'll book a call. So I book a call. It says name, position, company name, ARR. I don't know what that means. And then I keep going on all these weird like marketing and revenue things. And I'm like, all right. I'll just put my YouTube channel. I'll just be like, I have a YouTube channel. This is how much money I've made or whatever. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I book a time on this guy's calendar, and it sends me an email, and it's like, here's your Zoom invitation. I'm like, what's Zoom? I don't know what that is. So I've never heard of it. I know what Skype is. So that was the first time I ever used Zoom. And I get on the phone with the guy, and I'm like, listen, Chris, I was like, dude, I'm not a company, as you probably saw, but I saw your thing on Upwork, and I really want to work for you. I like your company, and I'm out here. I want to edit your podcast. And he said, all right, I really like your mentality. Like, let's schedule an interview, So I didn't just apply on Upwork. I just found the website, booked a call, got creative. So it's probably less about when the opportunity's there, as long as you recognize it, you're going to say yes. It's more about like trying to find those ways, I think, to create it.
Yeah. And I think the key too is you got to put yourself in the game. Like, you weren't just sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to come to you, or it's like you were doing the work. You're putting yourself in the game, and you put yourself in the game long enough. Like you said, luck kind of meets you where it's good timing, meets good opportunity, good preparation. And then from there, it's then a matter of saying yes and then figure it the heck out. So love it, man. And so I guess I'd be curious, for anybody listening to this, if they want to see more info on you, everything you're up to in your life and in your world, and the podcast and everything you're doing, where's the best place for people to find more information on you?
Yeah. So myself personally, it's sullybop.com. So that's SULLYBOP, sullybop.com. And so that has my whole background, my music videos, what we do as far as like podcast production, my personal podcast called Bopcast, basically a whole amalgamation of everything that I do. Yeah. And then my company's called Podcast Principles. We do done for you podcast launch, a holistic approach to podcasting for personal brands. So that's what I've been working on for the last 2 years. And for the last 6 months, building a team around that. So between those two things, if you search Sully Bop or Podcast Principles, you'll find me. Ryan Sullivan, there's like 400 million of us, so probably don't search that name. But yeah, the website or the company name, either way, you'll find me. And I'm on all socials. So all socials, shoot me a DM, connect with me, tell me you came from this podcast or whatever. I'm always checking everything. I always talk to everybody, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, IG, all
Heck
that. So.
Love it. And we'll put all that in the show notes too. So if you're listening to this, you get easy access to it. And so the last question I have for you, and this is a question we ask every guest because we're about helping people find direction, but we want to do it through action, is what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Mm-hmm. Take one thing that you thought would always be cool to try, that one little thing in your head that it would be fun just to try that. Right? Grab somebody else in your life who loves you and trusts you and go with them to go try that thing. And even just to do it on a small scale, whether that's taking a comedy class or an acting class or trying to go fishing on the ocean. I don't care what it is, but like, just try one of those little things, because for me, I tried a podcast and it ended up changing my life. So that's what I would say. Just, grab somebody you love and they'll want to do it with you. So you don't have to feel like you're going into it alone. And I think that'll really help out. So try that.
For real. I love that. That one thing that you always thought would be cool to do, go do the thing. Love it, man. Well, Ryan, thank you so much again for being here on the podcast, man. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you for bringing all the value and just, honestly sharing your story of your life. We appreciate it. And again, thanks for being here.
Stu, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time and your podcast and your platform, man. I am going to be, keeping up with everything you're doing as well. And for all the listeners, thank you for listening as well. Thanks for being here.
Heck yeah.